Okay, MYB community, thank you so much coming back to us. Episode 213 of the Minding Your Business podcast, entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's still no business like minding your own. We are, there's no reason why October need to fly by this fast. I mean, as slow as 2020 has been going, we just, for some reason, just flew through October. So we're recording this October 26th of 2020 in our glorious new social distance and quarantine life that we're all living. We're heading towards, I guess, month 8, I guess, of of all of this, and we'll see kind of how things are rolling. I know you guys have enjoyed the presidential debate and all the comedy that those bring. And maybe you've had a chance to do your early voting. Who knows what election day is going to look like? But I hope this finds you well, and I hope, regardless of any of the outside noise that's going on, that you remain diligent and focused on your goals and what you have to accomplish. Whatever happens in the White House, whatever happens to the guy you've been arguing with on Twitter all day, whatever happens with anything that's on the news, and who comes with the vaccine and all that type of thing, just know that through that all, you've endured so much, and you can continue to be great. And remember, always be great for yourself, for your family, and your community. Okay. Subscribe to the podcast, 5-star, wherever you get your pods. Helps us to continue to grow the MYB community. And of course, you can always connect with me at champronbrooks.com. Listen, I'm excited for a tremendous guest. We had a chance to talk offline a little bit. So I got a really good kind of flavor and rapport for our guest today, Sam Ovett, who's the founder of mobilepocketoffice.com. That's mobilepocketoffice.com. We're going to talk, about his background. We're going to, have a little fun with that, kind of his rise, up to what he's doing today. We'll learn about Mobile Pocket Office, and we'll talk a little bit about automation, which I think is something near and dear to all of our hearts. For those of you that are building your business or looking to build your business at some point, these are the type of resources and content, quite frankly, that you want to have, because building business systems, as we've talked about, is tremendous to, actually having the type of business and the type of organization that can really support your lifestyle and allow you to really expand your reach without your direct effort or your team's direct effort with every single pinpoint. And so, Sam, listen, I can't thank you enough, man, for joining. You've got some interesting weather there going on in Colorado, but man, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here and delighted here in Colorado. Just a little backstory that we went from being on the edge of our seats this last week with wildfires raging. The closest one was 6 miles from our house to about a foot of snow outside. I'll actually turn my computer around and show everybody, because it is and it was my wife and I's anniversary on Friday. Wow. So this is the best anniversary gift we could get. A bunch of wet snow is like, I couldn't think of anything better. So we are real happy here. To have that. So, and excited to be on here and share what we do, what we talk about with people and what we help them with. So yeah,
absolutely. Well, first of all, happy anniversary to you and your wife.
Thank you. 4 years.
Yeah, excellent. There you go, man. Just rolling right along. Yeah. And then obviously a good call on the snow that helps quench the wildfires. I couldn't imagine them being 6 miles from my house. That's insane.
It's the first time we bought this house in June, and it's the first time I've been that close to a wildfire where it had the potential to, with the right winds, impact us. And I think, actually, we'll talk about it later, how automation actually puts some of the things we do at ease from a livelihood perspective when that stuff's going on and kind of raging around you. But it is an experience that is sort of just a low grade stressor over your shoulder all day long till it goes away. And you can't really do anything about it. You just, except for a little bit of maybe volunteering to, go out and dig fire lines, which I found out later that you got to be certified to go dig line. I'm a healthy guy. Like I'm like, sign me up. I'm gonna go walk out there and I'll be happy to dig some fire lines. Like, just tell me what to do. And what can I do? and it says, it turns out you have to go through a training, which makes sense. And
Of course.
and so that has me, I print it out here, and then we'll move on to some of the things you want. The volunteer application.
There you go.
And because we're like, well, what can we do? We're just sitting here stressed out, thinking about it. Nice to at least be productive in the community and be helpful if you can. And so, in a perfect world, we have automation running business stuff, so we can go out there and do that kind of thing.
Of course.
So that's what's happening here. So that was a unique experience. So kind of opening up with that is, it actually made me think about a lot of different things we do for automation and how valuable it is. So
yeah, absolutely. Well,
and besides, it doesn't. One last thing. Besides, it can't hurt to have to pass a physical fitness test once a year. It kind of keeps you.
Yeah, it keeps you going. Right. Yeah, exactly. You always got to be checking in that health is wealth. And so
that's right.
Making sure that you stay in tune with that is definitely another plus, for sure. So you got to kill two birds with one stone with that. No doubt. So, hey, so Sam, let's get into it. For those that aren't familiar with you, I guess, kind of specifically, tell us about, your background and kind of, your journey to get to, to where you are today.
Yeah. So with with Mobile Pocket Office specifically, kind of bringing it up to that journey, obviously that's not what I've done since I was birthed. There are other things that lead up to that, right? It's not a linear path. It wanders a bit.
Right.
And, one of the things that I was fortunate to have, and I'll tie this in, is that my father, Josh, and who's also now my business partner in this business, and I'll talk a little bit more about that because that's really fun, is that he was always in the world of business process in some fashion and optimizing people's process and systems and automation and analytics from pretty early on. He's been doing it now for 30 plus years. And so that history, and he was always ran his own company since I was born. And so prior to since I was born. And so that history of that made a big difference in my perspective on this kind of thing and working, for yourself, if you will. And so that's part of the story, and I'll dive into it more. But growing up, I was really the thing that I was like so excited about was the outdoors, and which is one of the reasons I live in Colorado in the mountains, because I love that. It's a big part of my life, and it plays into this story of it. And actually, if I take those lessons from it, it has had a big impact. And so I grew up really, really interested in business always, but really, truly, my like the thing I was really excited about all the time was like sort of the extreme sports of the outdoors. So the sport that became and went through scouts, I'm an Eagle Scout. And so that helped develop some of the fundamentals around the safety and actually having those skills. And then what that develops, and I think this is an important thing for people to recognize, if they participate in any kind of sport that has a physical component and a risk component, those lessons are lessons, if you realize them, that you can carry over to business. And so that's how this ties in to the whole business aspect of things, which is really cool. And so I got a degree in environmental science. I was always interested in the environment and the world around me and ecosystems and how things interacted and created a system, a whole system, not just the parts of the system. And so that to me was always really exciting. And then after college, I was paddling whitewater, the kind of whitewater you paddle your boat and you'd go over a waterfall. It could be 40, 60, sometimes up to 80 feet. And then you're running these rapids, and we did some international traveling. Then I got into guiding that kind of whitewater and also teaching people how to paddle that for a little bit. And so I was in the outdoor industry. And as a consequence of that, I ended up becoming sponsored as an athlete in that realm. And that was really the major introduction to the world of marketing automation and business, because later what I realized towards the end of the paddling professionally side of things, whitewater kayaking and racing down creeks and doing expedition type stuff, is that I was a marketing tool for the company. I was a way to give them greater reach.
Of course.
And so with that, I started to recognize more things. So there's the whole aspect of guiding people in challenging terrain, looking at risk, understanding the judgment that is involved with that, making decisions so that you can do these things that look to other people very challenging, crazy, right? Wild.
Yeah.
Just like taking risks in business. They look crazy and wild and people don't understand what you're doing. But if you
Right.
understand the risk, if you're aware of that risk, and you also know where your potential downfalls are and where
Yeah.
you can adjust without having to expose everything and potentially lose it all, you can set safety nets almost for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Then you have this really cool opportunity for me, it was taking those lessons and applying them to business to look at it and go, well, how can I apply this business? How can I protect the downsides in what I'm doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can I take these like what look like wild risks to other people and do them in a way that, is actually quite safe and calm. And for me, I'm not redlining my heart rate. I feel very in control of all the factors, and I know where to get out if it gets real hazardous, and I know how, and I've set up systems and processes and also a community and people around me to keep me in check. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So those lessons from that, that was a big portion of my life. The outdoors still is. We ski and climb all the time. That's why the skis are on the wall, because there's 12 inches of snow on the ground. I can out the door, boom, I can pretty much out the door, go ski up the mountain. So very fortunate in that way.
Yeah.
And by design as well, a mix, of luck and by design for sure. But those lessons taught me a lot. And then also the other side of it was the automation, which we'll get into. And I'll bring this all together, is that the automation, the desire there is to say, well, if I want more time in my life to do these things, I mean, I'm pretty good. I'll get up early. I'll stay up later, and I'll get it in. But if I really want more time and I use automation appropriately, well, now I have really an opportunity to pursue the things in life that are really, really exciting to me, right? And that could be a combination. For me, it's pursuing new avenues of the way we're doing our business, what we're doing with our business. And it's also, if I'm real and honest with myself, it's spending time outdoors and being able to go on extended trips and expedition type stuff and the daily stuff here, and having systems, processes, and automation in place make that largely what possible in a big way. And so, you don't necessarily think, oh, sports, the sort of mountain sports is what I'll call it, as a tool to understand how to make business decisions. But for me, I've been able to relate those experiences, and I'd be, I wouldn't be giving you the whole picture if I didn't introduce that aspect as such an important part of my life.
Yeah. Sam, what's interesting with that, if you think of just in not even in a vacuum, but just overall, you think of what's involved in outdoor sports. There's a lot of creativity. It can move, fast.
Yep.
Every single experience isn't the same, so it's not very homogenous in that sense. It's certainly very heterogeneous in terms of your experience from one moment to the next. Based on a number of different factors. And so I love that kind of tying in your background on because I could see how it shaped a lot of your thinking from a young age. Because like you said, when you go out on your skis or you're out on your bike or you're climbing, there's a lot of improvising you have to do.
Absolutely.
When you make a mistake, you have to quickly learn from it and get up and move again, right?
Yeah.
You can't just lay there and wallow in it, right?
That's right. No, you got to do it. You got, and certain situations, not all the time, obviously, but you're in a position where you're making a life or death decision, or like you're potentially exposing yourself to something that could injure you. And those things, it is different than business decisions in a sense. They can be just as scary. Let's be real. But at the same time, if I always go, nobody's going to die today, and that could happen in some of the other things we do. And so that allows me to have a clearer, calmer head a lot of the times when things are challenging, and you're like, because there's no doubt about it, their business decisions and some of the stuff that we do is like there's a high level of stress involved.
Sure.
And I think anybody who's been in business a decent amount of time would probably agree that like business can be very stressful, and that stress isn't always a bad thing, because you can be making a big decision that's positive, but it's a big decision. It's stressful. You're using your resources and things like that. So
yeah. Well, I think making decisions under that pressure, I think that's where
yes,
they overlap very well. Is that
absolutely.
when you're doing outdoor events like that, and like you say, life or death can be viewed, like you say, differently between business and
Yeah.
but we talk to a lot of business owners, and we'll get to this in a little bit when we talk about the pandemic. A lot of business owners stress about things, employees and people
Yeah.
relate, right? And what's going to happen down the line, and can I make sure these people have entrusted not just themselves but their families, their family livelihoods entrusted to me, and so I can see that parallel between the same, like when you go out and say a group of your buddies, you guys
That's
go
right.
and do something outdoors, you're concerned about your buddies' well-being, along with yourself, right?
That's
And
right.
so,
That's
yeah,
right. Absolutely. And it's that position of, well, I am in charge of my decisions that I'm making right now for
yeah,
myself. And my step that I take, or that stroke that I take in my boat, or that move that I make while I'm rock climbing, and I may fall, like that is my decision to make, and it's my solely. I can take it or I cannot. But
yeah,
at the same time, I'm part of a group of people, or a small party of people that are relying on me to make that and do that safely in a way that doesn't impact them negatively either,
yeah,
and also watch their back and potentially be ready with the rope should they fall, and
yeah,
so they can get back on the climb because we're part of a team to get up a mountain, or in that type of situation. So I think there's a lot of overlap, like you were mentioning, and I think it goes sometimes unnoticed. People go, oh, you just do this thing outside. Well, actually, if you take those lessons and you recognize how you can apply them to other aspects of the life, then it becomes this like amazing tool to
yeah,
learn. If you don't, it's then you're just doing this other thing, and it's
exactly.
you know
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. So, it's interesting, Sam. I think, like I say, it's an interesting parallel to draw on, and I can see again where it's kind of shaped your life. And so, as the company, so you have the beginnings of the company,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
So talk about those early days, and again, it's kind of on that same line of that parallel where, when you're really early getting into, a new outdoor event, and there's,
Yeah.
you're trying to foster, how you're going to approach it. I imagine it's the same in business, that, there's some great joys, there's some things that, you learn from, kind of walk me through that process.
Yeah, so to go sort of back, like you're saying, to the mobile pocket office side of things and how it grew, it started from, so I was doing the outdoor sports things, and I was involved with more and more of the marketing side of it,
Sure.
and realizing what was going on. And then I was starting to learn about these marketing automation tools, because I started to see them being used.
Sure.
And also then when I learned about them and the ability to automate things, both sales, marketing, just the whole process in business, when you see that, when you start to think in systems and you see it applied in a domain that you're watching and a part of, what I found for myself was that I started to see everywhere opportunities to automate things, and where people were just doing all this busy work and that they weren't enjoying, and customer journeys that people were creating for their customers were falling apart, or that somebody bought something and they were forgotten about. There's just
Yeah.
all these, I just saw these holes, and it's kind of like light bulb went off, and I was like, all right,
Right.
and so there was a year about after the guiding and everything. My wife and I went on the road, and we traveled and taught for Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics all around the Western United States. We lived out of a Subaru, and then Subaru sponsored the program. We taught in Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and Idaho. And systems were a huge part of what was being used to manage this program. And then through that, it was just even more exposure. And then we decided personally that, okay, I was ready to get out of the outdoor industry, because I was either needed to buy an outfitter or something like that, or go a different direction. And
Yeah.
so I was talking with my dad, And he said, well, there's some really exciting tools in the automation space that he had seen, and we started to explore those. And then a long story short on that one, and we can go into some more of the details, but basically he said, well, I've been doing this in the business, analytics world and process, but not for the marketing side of things and not for the sales side of things as much.
Yeah.
And the tools are just amazing. They're getting so much better that are available to people. It's an exciting space. And what I was seeing with the systems that were being used and just the dearth, right? The lack of like, these systems could be put in place for so many things. And I just saw it just like a hole everywhere I would look in the outdoor industry. And so we decided, well, why don't we open up a portion of the business that's directly related to consulting with people and automating their process, starting with the focus of automation on the marketing, because that's what's exciting. And then from there, if you can get that going well, then it creates downstream problems that you have to address, because you've now increased your business. Now you have to address it with more automation. So it was a natural point to look at with that. So we decided, okay, well, let's do this as partners in the business. So he had successfully run his other company, but he didn't necessarily have customers that were interested in this aspect of automation that much. So we opened it up and started partnering. And this, I think, is something somebody can take away, is we partnered with software companies. One of the ones we partnered with heavily was Entreport, and we're still a good partner with them. And it's a automation tool. And that is where we started to get introduced by being on their list of certified consultants and things that you can get on, started to get introduced to businesses who were seeking out complex automation to handle their high influx of business. So that was the key. We were going after businesses that had a big demand, right? They had a lot of interest, but they couldn't handle the interest and convert it into sales effectively at the amount they wanted. And then they had problems with fulfilling, delighting, and referring. So we'll talk about the different pieces of business that apply to everybody. And I think you'll probably relate to these, but every business, the way we looked at it, has to attract new business, right? If you don't have new business, you don't have a business. And so with that, what would happen is people who were really good at attracting, maybe they were great at blogging, maybe they had just a really interesting product, they had this massive interest, but they saw the numbers of people visiting their sites and opting in, maybe to a basic newsletter or a simple form on their website. And they were going, we have, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people a month or more opting in, but we're getting, 5, 6 sales out of it, right? Like, what about all these other people?
Exactly.
What about all these other people? And so that to us was the type of customer that we wanted to work with. Because that was the one where there was the biggest opportunity to help them out.
What about industry, Sam? Is there like specific industries you more like to target as a, or maybe is there an industry that you kind of stay away from, or?
That is a good question, and I'll go into it, because the interesting thing is what we started to find is we had an initial focus on, well, let's look at manufacturing and maybe some outdoor companies, because my dad knew that space and I knew the outdoor space. And what we started to find is through these introductions, by working with different software companies, the people that were coming to them, it was just across the board. And so we said, well, what's a framework that works across the board industry-wise? Because from a business perspective, it's all pretty similar. The fulfillment of the actual product and what they do is unique, it's different, and there's different buyers for it. But so we started to put together, what is a business framework that works for any industry? Because we were getting interest from all these different industries.
Yeah.
And the framework that we settled on was the following. You got to attract. So that's attract, and then you have convert, right? So if you have that interest, now you got to convert that interest to leads and sales.
Right.
And then you got to fulfill, right? So across the board right now, any industry, this applies. You got to fulfill whatever you promised, right? They bought it. What are you fulfilling? That could be a good, that could be a digital thing. It could be a service. but you got to fulfill that promise. Otherwise, you're quick out of business because you're not doing what you promised.
Right. So you said you have to attract.
You have to attract, and you have to
Mhm.
convert
Right.
that interest into leads and sales, right? You got to capture
Right.
them and turn it into money through sales. And then you got to fulfill whatever that great promise is that you made.
Right.
And then,
Exactly.
and that's where most businesses stop. But there's two more stages that we added in for the ones that do it really well is delight. So if you can help someone get great value out of whatever it is you do,
Yeah.
after you've made that sale, that could be additional services you provide. Think about, for example, someone who sells hot tubs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sold them a hot tub. Well, you got to get that hot tub serviced. You got to get
Right.
it cleaned. You got to maintain it. You need the chemicals for it. And so those are all things that if you don't do them, your hot tub becomes scummy. You can't use it, right? It's now less than delightful for you. And so that's a good, just kind of something I think many people can just think about and relate to. You could say the same for pools, but if you can delight them and make sure that their experience with whatever you sold them is the best that it can be, there's an opportunity for you to generate more revenue right there.
Okay.
And there's an opportunity for you to increase the customer service, which then plays into the final stage. So we have attract, convert, fulfill, delight, and refer.
Mm.
And
Yep.
the final stage is refer. So you need people to refer business because that's the best marketing.
Exactly. Yep. The word
Referral
of mouth
business,
marketing, right? That just comes
right?
from people referring, warmly, right?
Yeah. And anybody getting started, it's hard because you don't have business that you've done before.
Right.
But once you do that, if you focus on it and make it part of your systems, process, and then potentially automation, and we'll talk about how we think about that, then you have this amazing opportunity to continue to grow your business. And you can then look at the different stages. And this is what we did. So this is why industry ended up not mattering. We thought it would, but it really ended up not mattering. Is that we could apply this track, convert, fulfill, delight, refer, 5 stages to any industry, and it works. And so from there, you look at those big buckets. Those are your systems, right? That's your system to run the business.
Sure.
Doesn't matter what you sell, that's your system to run the business. And then you look at what are the processes in that system. Are they loose? Maybe they're not defined yet, but you have something. If you're actually doing business, you have something that you're doing in each of those stages. And a lot of people forget about the last two, the delight and refer. So you may have
Sure.
nothing going on there, but the best businesses do. And if you want to be like the best businesses, then you should too.
Yeah. No
And
doubt.
so you want to, then you look at, so this is how we take it to automation, because it doesn't actually start. We don't just go, jump in, automate, like, let's go,
Yeah.
It's like sometimes there's little automation wins you can do to free up some time, but
Yeah.
majority of the time you got to look at your, and this is where that whole environmental science and looking at ecosystems and systems, like I took that knowledge and applied it to the business. And what are the systems that make up business? What
Yeah.
are the viewpoint? And then you break down systems into components, and then you can fine tune the components, right? So the system is that whole thing. That's a business system. Every business in the world has at least the first 3, all the way through to fulfill. And then the good ones have delight and refer. And then from there, you go, well, what are the processes that we do in those stages, right? So for example, what we look at there, and I'll give you a story,
Yeah.
is we have a customer. They're an amazing group of folks. Their website's called Mastering Diabetes. They run online courses for folks to help them master their diabetes. And these 2 guys are incredible. It's Cyrus and Robbie. They both have they're type 1 diabetics, and so they have to manage their own. And they're like the fittest dudes I've ever met, and they're awesome. And they are New York Times bestsellers with their book, and they were really, really good at attracting people organically through their blog and all their social media and everything they did. They were great at what some people would consider the cold part of marketing, right? Getting new cold interest to find out. And they solve a problem for people. And Cyrus has a PhD from Stanford. And so they're brilliant guys. And they still are, have a lot of traffic that comes to their site and opt-ins, but they wanted to convert more of that. And so we started looking at it and saying, what is your components of attract, convert, fulfill, delight, refer, right? Ron, you with me? You froze a little bit, so I'm making sure. Not sure if it's you or me. I'll wait a sec. I'm waiting for Ron to jump back on. Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Yep, we're back in. I'm not sure what jumped off, but
that's okay.
internet.
So, I kind of paused there because I was like, wait a second, screen didn't look as maybe. So these guys are they're attracting a ton of people, right? Really good at that. And their primary challenge was converting that traffic, fulfilling, and then they were actually decent at delighting people once they were in. And then they needed to boost up their referrals as well because they had great success. People were managing their type 1 diabetes and getting rid of effectively the condition of type 2 diabetes. So with them, we broke down the systems. And one of the things we did first with them is we said, okay, what are the parts of your system that you need to focus on? First, we looked at the whole thing. Then we dive in and we looked at the processes within each component of the system. We said, okay, you're pretty good at attracting people. We don't need to talk about that. Maybe we need to make it a little easier for people to get in, right? Because there's some opportunities. But largely, you got that covered. Now, and I know that's a big point that people want to talk about, and we'll get into that because that is I think some of the hardest work that people do in business is attracting new business. I think that's probably one of the hardest things. And then you have convert, right? So they need to convert more of that interest to paid people who wanted to take their, work with them and work with the different set of nutritionists that they had on staff and buy some of the different products to help them. And then they wanted to encourage people to actually get the results that they started after. And so this is a tool that people can use. We said, here, fill this thing out, fill out 2 different sheets. One is, what are all the pieces of technology you use? They were technology heavy because they run very digitally. So what are all the pieces of technology you use to power your business? Write every one down. So they started writing them down, and we started finding more. And we said, go into your PayPal, go into your bank, and look at everything that's a recurring subscription SaaS product that you've bought, And pretty quickly we found there were 60, I think it was between 60 and 70 different tech tools when they added them all up, every single one that was used to run the business. And so number one, that was interesting. And what we found there was, what are the opportunities that you're missing here?
Right.
So that's one aspect. And we said, now write down what each one of them does. What does it do for you? Does it connect something? Does it deliver something? Does it show something? What does it do? Does it allow you to do something? Right? This is every piece in their business, all the way through to the accounting aspect of it.
Yeah.
And then we said, now to actually go through from the starting at the convert all the way through to the fulfill in their case, and the delight, because it was ongoing once you were involved with them. What do you have to manually do? And what is automated today? Because a lot of people have some basic automation that they don't even think about as automation.
Yeah.
And so they wrote that down in what we call personal activity log. So we said, here, take this, spend 2 to 5 days, depending on how long it takes, that cycle of what you do. Sometimes people's cycles span maybe more of 2 weeks, but after about 2 weeks, you figured out everything you can do in your business, right? You've gone through all the different manual things most of the time. And document it. It's a simple spreadsheet. Put it on that spreadsheet, and then that is your process. So now we know the tools involved in running your process. We know what they do, and we know what your actual process is.
Right.
Now we can start to identify what is actually taking up your time so that you can focus on improving your business. And once we found out the things that were taking up the time, then we were able to start looking at what of that can be automated. to take that time off their plate. And in some cases, it had to be delegated. But you with me? So this whole idea that first you start with the big picture.
Okay.
Then you look at the process involved. And then you look at the systems you use to run it. And then now you've got a picture of what can be automated.
Right.
And if the work doesn't require creativity, you should delegate it, automate it, or get rid of it and don't do it anymore.
Yeah. And so then, Sam, how do you, as an owner, right?
Yeah.
How do you recommend viewing that process against, so you've got your human capital piece of that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of someone that's maybe been in business, they've kind of vetted, they've got, 10, 15, 20 employees, and they're looking at what they automate. And so philosophically, again, I guess I'm leaning into kind of my thoughts on kind of automating, which is this. And I said this when I was running, retail operations in banks, where you're balancing technology with the people, right? And so I always had this idea that technology should handle those routine, not to say mundane, but kind of those routine kind of transactions, so that the people can do what they do best, which is not handle the routine stuff. People are best sort of freestyling, right? Kind of building relationships and kind of freestyling. So they're good at that qualitative kind of piece of building the relationships and going through that process: attract, convert, fulfill, delight, refer. That's what the human being should be doing. The technology should do some of the behind the scenes stuff that help you attract, convert, fulfill, delight, and refer. So with that kind of philosophy, how do companies, or how do you recommend companies balance that? Because then on the employee side, I can remember in banking, being a branch manager, and they came in, and this is back several years ago when they were really trying to push people to the ATMs. Right. And, of course, a bunch of us stand up and say, well, what about the tellers? And they, they're all saying, oh, the tellers are going to be fine. It's not going to impact them. And we're all kind of like in our mind, like, oh, BS. Like, this is, and ultimately that's what kind of happened. Was branches now run with way less people than they did in the past. And, we can all argue whether that's kind of, good or bad or indifferent. But I'd love to hear your thought on that, because, there's always this fear from the people, right, of automation, that
it's going to take my job.
It's a threat to the human being.
I'm going to lose my job. Right.
Right.
Let's call it like it is. I'm going to lose my job.
Yeah. So how do you balance that? Because there's a cultural piece to that. There's a lot of impacts. And again, what ultimately goes back to the business mission that can be adversely impacted. I would imagine if that's not properly balanced.
Yeah. So I got into the weeds there for a second on talking about the how we think about it, but to zoom back out philosophically, absolutely, the way that we think about it is it's be human where it counts, otherwise automate. So that's like the guiding principle, right? How can you be human where it counts and otherwise automate?
Right.
What does that mean? It means different things for different businesses, but it is in the line with this idea that humans are better and generally more fulfilled when they're doing creative work, when they're doing the work to design how they're going to actually work on the business versus routine, mundane tasks, right?
Right.
And so the way that we encourage people to think about it, and we take people through this process when we talk about it, is that you want to start with identifying, and there's a couple different perspectives I'm going to look at this from. So one is the perspective of someone who's the CEO perspective, right? What is that person, their responsibility is to grow the business usually, right? And expand it maybe into new markets and make sure it's run well. And sometimes that's divided between someone who's more on some even more detail to the operation level. But the idea is that if you are the CEO of the business, you want to say, well, what can I put in place that allows my business to scale? Right.
Sure.
And it makes it a little more bulletproof, makes it more resilient. If you have systems that do the job of someone that would do that same thing manually, and it's automated, like you said, those mundane tasks that still have to happen to run the business, and they're usually boring, mundane, routine tasks. that are detail oriented, error prone, and if they don't happen, impact the customer experience greatly, but are not really that enjoyable to do, and are usually don't cost that much in terms of human capital. Let's be real. Like you can hire a lower paid person to do
Sure.
these types of things. And it's routine. That is the kind of thing that you need to automate.
Right.
And that same person, it doesn't mean you have to get rid of them. Sometimes you will. That's just the reality.
Right.
But that same person is probably a very creative individual that has a lot of experience with your business. And if they're doing these things on a daily basis, they could be your best set of eyes to understand where more of your business could be automated, because they're doing it. They know what's being done. And so they can actually be some of the best people to help you design your systems, because they are the ones in the trenches doing it every day. And they've probably created little workarounds and things like that that actually improve the experience, make it better, that you don't even know about.
Yeah. Sam, it's an interesting dialogue because, I've had this idea for the grocery business for some time, in that, if you look at what Amazon did and how they kind of stiffed FedEx, right, by coming in with their own, fuel efficient vehicles and kind of stiffing them out the way, and okay, we'll take it from here, boys. And, now they're in the delivery business, right? I look at that and I was like, how could that be modeled in the grocery business, right? You've got areas in low to moderate income communities where it may not be maybe the most prudent or maybe the most efficient, right, to add grocery stores, right? So you've got these food deserts across America.
Yes.
My thought is that it could be automated to where, and if you take Sam's Club and Costco and some of those, folks model and combine it with this, that, automation could be used at where it wouldn't necessarily, result in people being let go, but it would reroute, and a different skill set would be needed at that point. So then there could be a retraining or kind of repurposing of the human capital. And so I want to get your thoughts here on kind of along the lines with what you just said, because I think it could be powerful for those listening, is taking, the delivery business within the grocery store. So the grocery store is not this retail, kind of building that everybody drives up to and is getting, anywhere from one item to however many items. But now the grocery, it's largely delivered. So you order it ahead of time through, mobile app, whatever, and it's delivered on one of those trucks. And so each store has this certain mile radius that it delivers, kind of like your pizza place, right? But then the employees, you don't need like all these checkers and all these bag people and all that. What happens is then people are stock people. So now you've got people, because you don't have the general public coming in, you can stock in merchandise within the building much different, because now that box of cereal can sit up 20 feet high. Because you're not worried about some old lady needs to be able to reach it. So you got to merchandise it at eye level. Right. So now you spend more time in quality control. So now you have people, those checkers now are in quality control. You've got, the stock people who are putting things up, and then you've got people that are putting together orders right all day. And then you've got delivery people. So people that are driving trucks and vans, delivering it to people's place of business or their home. And I always just kind of had, at a very high, rough idea level, of course, that idea of a nice balance to the example we're talking about of, you've got this really stark technology, Sam, that's, that, innovates the way that people get fresh food, right? And you've taken away one of the pain points, which is, the shrinkage and all that type of managing a retail store, where John Q. Public is just walking in so many hours a day. And then you've got this delivery system, which is getting things out efficiently. You've got quality control, which you probably don't have as much in the retail grocery right now today. But you've got someone that's checking what's coming off the truck, how long something's been on a shelf, that sort of thing, instead of pushing in, cart baskets that are dumped on a parking lot.
Right. And that's a great example. That kind of thing. Like, does anybody go, like, maybe it builds some character for sure, pushing cart baskets in, but like, and there's something to be said for that kind of like stuff. Absolutely. But at the core end of the day, it's like it's labor's cheap for it. It's not that exciting. It's definitely not that creative. I mean, there's some creative ways to stack cards together for sure, but like, it's not ultimately after maybe you've done it for a month or two, you've probably figured out all the different things that are going to be creative about it for the most part. And it's those kind of jobs that like people want to move on from anyways. They don't want to do those for the rest of their life, you know? And so when you can automate those things and create the experience like you talked about, where it's a more controllable experience, you pull out some of the variables, it's easier to manage potentially. You get your quality control can go up, right? That is a great opportunity to put systems in place that have a degree of automation in them.
Right.
100%, because that is the stuff that's exciting. And the other thing about it too, and I think this is an interesting thing that doesn't get talked about as much. One side of automation is, we can scale this idea, right? This idea that's solving people's problems, right? Because that's all business is. It's an idea that solves some problems for people, right? Exactly. That you're able to deliver on. So like, if you use automation, the big picture minds can go, this is great because it can scale it. And then the CFO mind should be thinking, wow, if we invest a little more money up front in our automation, then that's someone that we don't have. Then that usually, if you look at it, pays itself off within a year to 5 years, depending on your business. Oftentimes faster, more in that year time frame, because now you don't have to pay a human to do that. And humans don't like to just get paid once. They like to get paid all the time, recurringly. Systems don't care. Systems get built and they get used.
Right.
And now it's automated.
Right.
But humans like to get paid. I don't know about you, but I got, if I'm working on something and I haven't hired anybody ever that says, oh yeah, I only want to get paid once, 1 year, please. 1 year salary, please. And then I'll work indefinitely forever until I need an upgrade,
Right.
And, and so that's what automation does. And that's also a way to look at it in terms of, and we can relate it back to that what you talked about there is, well, what if we develop a tool that goes down the aisles, right? And this is the same for the marketing automation, the sales automation, the fulfillment, for all this stuff is the same in terms of how you think about it, right? Implementation is different, but in terms of how you think about it, well, if I can make a robot to go and like pick the right thing, and I got a system for that, well, all I need is the power for the robot. It's never going to take a vacation. It's not going to get sick. It's not going to take any leave. And it's also a super boring job for a human. And that same human is a creative person, right? They're an individual with a mind and a brain, every human, and could probably be doing something way more exciting and fulfilling with our organization than picking and moving stuff.
Right. Exactly. And so that's where I see that as they could be, like say, retrained and repurposed. Yeah. And this is where organizational culture has to come into play, because then senior leaders within organizations have to value organizational development and training and development.
That's
which sometimes can be lacked. So one of the keys to that, if they want to be heartfelt on, like you say, retaining the people and be for the people, then they also have to have the mindset for training and development. In my experience, that's a piece that's lacked. And I think that's been crippling to many companies, is that they only see automation as kind of one-sided, as just a
put
process.
This in, we can get rid of the people.
And this is cheaper than the people.
That's right. And there's a degree of that's just a little bit raw and true.
Sure, exactly.
There's a little bit that's raw and true. And it also, I think, is a social sort of change that we're going to have to adjust to as a culture, to say, you know what, as more things get automated, I need to be able to be adaptable and retrain myself and say, okay, well, and start to recognize that, that might be automated.
Right.
Well, what can I do? And also, as a culture, what can we be training ourselves on and valuing that is hard to automate? Right. And that line is pretty obvious. Things that take creative problem solving. There are a lot of industries and a lot of jobs out there that are going to be incredibly difficult to automate, or will have elements of automation to accomplish the job that require a pretty darn smart human to operate those automated tools.
Very true.
And those automated processes. And so I think automation, when it's used right, and when the culture is there for it, creates these really interesting, exciting opportunities that are better paying, more engaging, and more fulfilling when it's done right. There is a downside, and I think it's a raw, like, downside to it, is that, like, there are jobs that get lost because of automation. True. In the whole, it probably creates more jobs, but it may not be the same job that person who lost the job is skilled for.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of their big point there, Sam. I think that last point really, kicks it, is that it's not that it will eliminate jobs, right? I mean, that's just like you say, that's the inevitable piece of it.
Eliminate types of jobs in that industry, but it will probably overall create more jobs in a whole. But
it's going to I think when we say it's going to impact jobs, when we say it from a more negative perspective, like you said, I think you alluded to this, is that the type of job that is going to eliminate maybe something that is heavily populated by a lot of people in some cases, depending on the industry. And so, whereas in the past, we had 100 years of people just kind of training up and developing to go into this type of role. Now, when that role eliminates, it's going to be how quick do people adapt to that changing environment, to where, how are we preparing today's, the current workforce, and then tomorrow's workforce, maybe even more important, to the new roles that are today and then tomorrow. And I think the better we do that as a country, the better the country will be as we span out and look into the future. Is are people prepared for the type of jobs that then the automation does create, which are going to be, quite frankly, require a little bit more education, and a little bit more autonomy, a little bit more kind of free thinking, and that creativity, right? To be able to, like we talked about earlier, to make decisions and choices that are smart for everybody, all stakeholders involved, right? And can those people, can people in those roles be trusted to make those type of decisions, like we talked about, even with the outdoors or in business, where you've got to make them sometimes maybe not with full information, sometimes on the fly, right? And in the face of risk and fear.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it there, is that the fact that, like, there's a cultural aspect. Jobs are going to change. The type of job is changing. And with automation, like, the type of job is probably a little more demanding of the mind and of your leadership skills, and your judgment, your ability to make good decisions is going to be valued more, because these are the jobs that aren't the rote manual thing that's relatively straightforward, easy, and quick to train. It requires creative problem solving. And you look at a lot of industries, and there are so many that are just going to take a long time to be automated. Like a basic one, and this is just totally basic, but like plumbing. You're not going to automate plumbing anytime soon. Every house is plumbed totally differently. You got to go in and figure that out. And like those type of jobs, there's a lot out there that is not going to be automated. But I think a lot of the jobs in what we consider the white collar workplace are actually a lot of them are going to be automated pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like, I think more than people realize. People think about automation taking jobs in manufacturing and stuff like that. But a lot of the work done in the white collar workplace, in terms of, computer-based work, a lot of that's going to go away.
Yeah,
in the way that it is. And so it behooves you to be the one that is able to solve people's problems, to be able to be the one that is coming up with creative solutions that help grow the business, that help open up new markets, that help create better customer experiences.
Yes, absolutely.
because that's the type of stuff that's not going to be automated. You know, the machine doesn't know. I don't know. The machine can deliver a great customer experience if a human designed one.
Right.
But
And
if
you know
it's,
what? Going back to what you said earlier, that's intriguing. I was I was connecting the dots even with what you said earlier about attract, convert, fulfill, delight, and refer.
yeah,
People are going to be at their strongest in the future in the delight and refer
yeah,
area. The attract, convert, and fulfill is largely going to be automated.
yeah. You
Yeah,
know, I'd argue that attract is pretty tough to automate because you
sure,
need to be pretty creative, and it's largely your personality, brand, offer, problem being solved that's going to create an attractive environment for people to become interested in. But I'd
sure.
say convert and fulfill for sure. Those
Yeah,
are automated, and
yeah,
then delight and refer. Those have a big opportunity for people to improve those experiences and then apply automation to them,
yeah,
and then you know, you take a smart human and say, watch this automation, look at your metrics, make sure that when you build your automation you have metrics, and try and improve it, because that's where it gets really cool. And that's where it, you know, to improve an experience takes a creative thought process.
true.
And then you
Very
use
true.
automation to run that experience as much as you can so that you don't drop the ball, because that's the other thing automation does, right? It keeps you from dropping the ball on the customer experience you're trying to provide to people.
Right. Exactly.
And then you get more people who are delighted, who
Yeah.
want to refer because you haven't dropped the ball. You know, anytime you put humans in the mix, they drop the ball. Like, it's just
Yeah.
because
Subjectivity, right? It's
we
the
have life storms, right? Like, there's a wildfire 6 miles away. I'm not as focused on your project because my house might burn down.
right.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
The
Yeah.
computer doesn't have that problem.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't have that concern, and so it's much more objective. It doesn't have the fears and the biggest wild card in the world is the human being, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
it's got free will.
And then on that same token, that's what we're all as humans, I think, most drawn to. Humans connect with humans. They don't connect with machines.
Right.
Machines just help us deliver experiences better.
Yeah, it
And I
sounds
say
like we're
machines, I
talking
mean
about like
automation.
Skynet and like a Terminator movie.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's like, if everything was that, it'd be pretty hard to connect with. But
Right.
we connect with the people's stories, with the human behind it, with the problem that it solves, and that's the kind of thing where you got to keep that human touch, right?
Absolutely.
And the opportunities too to delight people with just some simple human touch is amazing,
It
right?
is.
Like, it's just, there's so much opportunity there for businesses to create a delightful experience and use automation to remind them when to do that at the right time.
Right.
Because if
Exactly.
you got 1,000 customers that are at any given, can you hear me?
Yeah.
If you got 1,000 customers that are at any given time in your customer journey, let's say,
Yeah.
how the heck are you supposed to know that it's time to write a thank you note or to reach out with a call?
Right.
You can't. It's
Yeah.
almost
There's no way to
impossible.
know. Yeah. I mean, there's
You
no
know,
way to keep that top of mind
we're
without
not
some kind of tool.
we're not built as humans for that.
Right.
We haven't evolved to be able to do that kind of thing. So if you use the tool to automate the process to tell you when to be human when it counts, then you can deliver a more human experience every time. And that's cool. You know, that's the stuff where it's really cool. So I you tell me where you want to take it, but like,
Yeah.
you know, we
Yeah.
can kind of dive into some actionable nuggets if you want, for people that they can like go and
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that in the aspect, Sam, of today's environment, right? And so,
Yeah.
we kind of nibbled on this a little bit. Obviously, if you and I had sat down January 1st and we were planning 2020, and we said, you know what, one of us said, you know what, we're more than likely going to have a worldwide virus pandemic. We're also going to have these outbreaks of, social injustice, for Black people.
Yes.
Um, all these different things that 2020 has entailed,
Yeah.
right? I don't think any of us could have predicted that, but here we are. And so, Sam, kind of, along this same spirit of, during the pandemic, and, how business owners, whether you're starting out now, if you're listening to this and you're new, or You've been in business for some time, and you look at these areas of attract, convert, fulfill, delight, and refer. What are you seeing now during the pandemic? On how business owners are addressing that, because and the reason I say that is because certain industries were impacted really hard, right?
Absolutely,
If you
for
take the
sure.
restaurant and travel industry,
Yeah,
they took the kick in the gut,
yeah,
for sure. um Other industries, expanded, right,
yeah,
and did more, because if you think of like the fintechs, right, or obviously the social media companies, or so anything tied to kind of related to
yeah.
social media, as Netflix, right, boomed up even more. So those industries that are tied to the home business, where people were more home bound, through their social distancing, those businesses continue to to flourish. But I love to get your thoughts on that, kind of how this all kind of aligns with the current pandemic.
So I'm glad you asked. I think the number one thing right out of the gate is like obviously more digital. Like that's a theme, right? Everything's more digital
Yeah.
for sure, just 100%, because that just forced that right out of the gate with the mandated quarantines. We didn't have a choice. Things had to go digital to keep communicating.
Yeah.
People's hunger to um, have human relationships didn't go away, hadn't
Right.
changed. It's gotten greater.
Yes.
And then we throw technology into the mix from the digital perspective. Obviously, that's something I think about a lot, but I think it is actually one of the great equalizers. Technology is largely, in terms of business technology to run a business, is cheap today.
Yeah.
It's cheaper than it ever has been. The actual tools, and it's accessible. I mean, think about it. You are running a podcast on, if you went back 10 years, these same tools to run this same thing were exponentially more expensive.
Oh yeah, 50 times more expensive. Yeah.
To do it at the quality and the level you're doing it at. So
Yeah.
like the tools to run a business today, they're more accessible than ever before. And so they're a great equalizer. What's not cheap is brick and mortar space. Never has been. And it's hard to get into. Big investment. You don't know. It's a big risk.
Right.
What is cheap, but it and has the potential to come with big reward. Let's be honest. But now everybody's using the internet. It took a pandemic to get people to use the internet.
Right.
Like fully. Everybody knows
Right.
what Zoom is for the most part. You know, like this is the type of thing that's forced everybody to use internet tools. Was it painful a little bit for people? Yeah, sure. But like they didn't have a choice. So it forced the change. And so if you have an idea today that solves a problem, your ability, it is crowded out there. There's a lot of noise because it's more accessible. More people are doing it. But if you consider that, nearly 7 billion people, I don't know what the actual user numbers of the internet are right now. I'm sure there's a metric somewhere, but like there's 7 billion people on the earth. There are a lot of people using the internet of that 7 billion. And if you have a problem that you can solve for people, you have the potential for a business because you can reach them using the internet and the tools that are digital that allow you to do that. And from a pandemic standpoint, if you were a brick and mortar, right, because those are the ones that were largely impacted, like where you showed up and had an in-person experience, that got hard. But if you said, what is the problem that I solved with my in-person experience, right?
Yeah.
What is and a problem can be fulfilling something that is exciting to people. It doesn't have to be a problem that is like a negative thing,
Right.
For example, and this is a harder one, but just as an example, is like, if you go to a play or a show, are you having a problem? No, but you're fulfilling an experience that people are excited to have. And the problem is that's the only place they can get it right now. Right.
Yeah.
So if we reframe it and go back, what are the component parts of my business? Is your business actually just a store? Is it a physical space? No, you probably solve a problem or provide an experience or a service or a good to people. And so if you look at it from that perspective, then you go, okay, the landscape has shifted. People can't come in anymore. They're afraid to come in. And so I can do a couple of things. now that it's not mandatory lockdowns and things like that, that was hard. No doubt about it. The people who were on their toes did what they could to pivot that experience to deliver the problem solving or the delight that experience created, or that social connection that experience created into a digital way or a socially distant way. Right. So that's a pivot. What do you do? What do you solve? So the question you got to ask yourself is, what do you solve for people? Or what do you share? Right. You're either solving people's problems or you're giving them something that they can't get otherwise that is delightful. Right. Largely.
Right.
If you have an in-person space. And so how can you take that experience and just say, well, what do we do? And how can we use the resources we have? And what resources do we need to get? Largely just technology tools in this case, which are cheaper than brick and mortar space every day, all the time.
Absolutely.
To take that experience and solve it in a digital or socially distant fashion. Right.
Yeah.
And if you look at it from that perspective, the world is pretty wide open again.
Yes.
If I'm a restaurant, I could start doing cooking classes that I can live stream from the chef that you really enjoy, right? I'm gonna teach you how to make these things. I'm gonna bring them, and then I'm gonna do some of them for free, and then I'm gonna have you pay for it, right? I can still do my takeout, but how can I, maybe I teach you how to make the drinks that you like to enjoy getting, right? So did everybody pivot? No, but did some? Yeah. Is it hard to pivot? Depends on your mindset, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, what's interesting with what you're saying is that, one of the hindrances in business is dogmatic mindset.
That's right.
The mindset that this is how we've always done it since 1815.
Yeah.
Right.
Therefore, it's the only way.
Right. Therefore, like you say, that's the only way. And we're not going to pivot. Right.
Right. Okay. Then you can die.
Right. Exactly.
That's the end of it for you.
Yeah. Some people, I think they'd rather, that's
it's
how
hard.
they look at it. They'd rather die than change the model or pivot. I mean, especially those drastic of a pivots. Like you mentioned, if I had a restaurant, that would be what I would look to do. And the rooted in all of that, like you said, in the human piece of that is experiences. That's what people want. That's what you can't get with the machine. Right. And that's where you talk about, the delight and the refer, those experiences you won't. That's the problem Amazon has. Right. Is, how do you create experience? Amazon's not an experience. Right. It's
convenience. It's convenience, and they win on convenience. And that's the other thing that you can do to improve your business, right? You can make it more convenient. If you make things more convenient, you're going to win.
Yeah.
Or if you make a better experience. And if you can do both, well, then you're really doing something great.
Yeah, you're cooking with gas at that point.
Yeah.
But if you can, so I think of like the retail stores, right? Of clothing, like a Macy's, right?
Absolutely.
If I'm getting killed by Amazon, I would convert those stores, like say, close the ones that aren't performing, right? And then reroute your energy to the ones that are in, good areas where you've got some good demographic around. But then convert the store instead of just racks of clothes everywhere with all these departments.
Yeah,
that's the past. What I would do is convert those, a lot of it to warehouse space. Think of like how IKEA does, where they've got maybe a quarter of the space is retail, and then 75% of the building is all just stacked to the ceiling of stuff, right? Of furniture, all boxed up, not put together.
And that retail experience that you do have is telling a story that someone can relate to.
Yes, because it's laid out, so it's displayed, right? So you get to feel and touch it, but you get to see how the furniture is laid out. That would be like in the home setting.
Yeah.
So it either gives you ideas that you didn't have, or can confirm idea that you did have. Hey, this is kind of how my kitchen's aligned. So we have this here. So like you say, it's giving you that direct touch and feel experience.
It's a story that you're experiencing. Someone built a story for you to go and step into.
Right.
And then what do you do? And I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I got excited. No. Is this idea that is this story. And then of course, well, one thing at a time, I'm getting excited, but the idea that if I was responsible for a retail store of any kind during this, you're obviously going to make contingency plans. How do we open it up safely, right? Because we want to bring people back in for that story. People are hungry for that story, but we don't know when that's going to be. That was pretty quick. Anybody who had a mind of awareness was like, hopefully they figured out, well, this is probably going to last a hot minute, right?
Sure.
And by a hot minute, like plan for 2 years. and and then like from there, it's a matter of going, okay, what was the value of this experience? How can we bring it to people? Well, I would do what the TV shows do. I would give the employees who were there doing other stuff, and I would say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring someone who's real good at creating an atmosphere that is interesting and telling a story over video. And then I'm going to show you the clothes. I'm going to show you the story. I'm going to go live and I'm going to bring you through these spaces every day. I'm going to give you this experience that you can come and tune into. And I'm going to make sure that there's the convenient part, convenient for you to buy it. And then that's where I'm going to use automation. So that's all attracting people, right? I'm going to give everybody a video camera and just put some basic structure in place and invite people into the store in a digital way, right? On all the different platforms. And I'm going to make it interesting. I'm going to make it exciting. I'm going to make it unique because I'm showing you the stuff that you would otherwise come to see. And I want to bring you into the store again, but I can't do it physically. So how do I do it virtually? And how do I make it convenient for you to buy? And then once you buy, well, I need automation to follow up. I need automation to make sure that you get what you were promised.
Yes.
Right. I need automation to let you know that if you bought only part of a set of furniture, that imagine this in your space. I need to do that with automation because I can't do it with humans. It's too like the brain isn't capable of managing that many relationships at once.
Right.
Where they stood in. And so now I've got an automation problem that I got to address, but that is solving the business's problem. That's what I do. But if I'm the business that's going direct to the consumer in that way, I'm going to say, what's the experience that I was providing? What's the problem I'm solving? And how can I make that virtual? And is it ever going to be as exciting as in person?
No, probably not.
No, probably not, right? Physical touch, feel, it adds another set of dimensions that you don't get today.
There are senses that you can't use. You can't use the only sense you're using. The senses that you're only using when it's virtual are sight and hearing.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You're taking away 3 senses that you can't use.
Right. So the experience is not as impactful. But can I still create a pretty amazing, impactful experience that's regularly makes it available? Oh, and it's already digital and your card's already saved to your browser, so you can just buy it because you're excited, and I make it convenient. Yeah, I can do that.
Right. Exactly.
I can do that. I just got to pivot, and I got to pivot fast before I run out of money. That's the other thing, right? Like that's the other challenge. And this was very abrupt for people. So I think the largest thing was denial, potentially for some people, not everybody. And then I got to pivot, okay, or I'll go out of business. And then the challenge was, how do I use all these tools, these tech tools, to do the business that I want to do, versus they're just, a lot of times tech tools just get in people's way. They slow people down. And automation slows people down because it's confusing. They're not sure how to handle it. And that's why you don't just automate things. You look at your 5 stages, you look at the systems and the stages, the processes within the systems, then you figure out what to automate based on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's all about pivoting.
It is. And I think of that, even things like the Disney store that used to just be all these stuffed animals of all the characters, right, from all the movies and shows. Why is that not, like you say, some type of event, right? Yeah. Someone dressed in character, kids can come in, learn the background behind each character. Hey, did you know that Mickey Mouse was almost scrapped because the guy said, hey, I hate mice and, whatever. You just never know, right? There's some story behind the character, right?
Exactly.
How it's drawn, and then let kids come in and learn how to draw Daffy Duck or whatever character from the thing. So and then instead of having these rows of Daffy Duck stuffed animals everywhere, then the automation comes where, hey, if you want your Daffy Duck, you can order it. It'll be at your house in 2 days, right?
Yeah.
Or depending on how large your store is, your existing infrastructure, hey, we've got them in the back, right? And they're all lined up to the ceiling, right? And so we'll bring one out to you, just wait out here while you're working. You order it right there on your phone or on our keypad, and one's brought out to you, and you walk away. Whatever that model is.
Exactly.
But the storefront, the real estate is then, like you say, it's taking people and putting them in income producing roles and not transactional roles. And I think that's largely what we're talking about is how do we convert people to roles that generate revenue, right? And use the automation to be able to do that, so that there's this healthy relationship between the two that ultimately gets to, I go back to this because I love these areas. I want to attract, convert, fulfill, delight, and refer.
Here's what I do, because we have maps and some basic worksheets people can use. So of this, so that people can actually visualize it and like take this and use it. So I would love to just make a note. If you want, I can give you a link that is maybe mopocketoffice.com/Champeron books or whatever you want to put. And you can share it with people, and they can go download and get some of this stuff and use it free.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you want to put something like that together,
I'll put something like that together, so you got it.
Yeah, and then what I'll do is it'll be in the show notes, MYB community. So the link that Sam will put together, that's tremendous, Sam. We appreciate that. I encourage you guys, MYB community, to go in and download that, use those free tools. That's tremendous. It's a great way to connect with Sam and his team. And then, definitely let them know that you heard them right here on the Minding Your Business podcast. But I think that's a tremendous resource.
But you're right in that, like, it is those 5 areas. If you look at them and you just go, if you take that context and you forget about the idea that, we do certain things a certain way and that's our business, it's not your business. Your business solves a problem or provides a service or makes a good. And that service, it doesn't have to be everybody's in a bad state type of problem. It can be it solves a problem that I'm hungry for the performing arts. I keep using that example, but or I want some wonderful food that otherwise I don't know how to cook myself. Right. And how can there's the obvious things. Do takeout. Okay. Well, don't forget the obvious, right?
Right.
You don't have to go just to the dramatic and forget the obvious.
Right.
Let's not do that. Let's do the things that are obvious, and then also say, what can we do? How do we think about what we do? What problems do we solve for people?
Right.
And how can we just adapt that to the framework that we're given today?
Yep, absolutely. No,
and then bam, like you're if you're in business, you're a problem solver.
Right.
And you know that it's a good idea if people are interested in having that problem solved. It's also a good way to find out if it's not a good idea, if you put it out there to the world and quickly find out that people don't want to take you up on solving that problem.
Right.
On to the next idea.
Right. Yep. No doubt about it, Sam. And as we, kind of transition, because this has been a tremendous dialogue here, Sam, just to say the least. I mean, but I guess as we kind of wrap up, for you, I guess we talked a lot about with the business and that's outstanding. I mean, but for you, what are some best practices? Because we've talked a lot about mindset today, and before we ever to get to any of the things really that we've discussed today, you got to have that proper mindset. What are 1 or 2 best practices that work for you? Because a lot of people listening to this, may be kind of younger in their business, and sometimes you run into that. You get fearful, right? You get anxiety about what tomorrow's going to look like. You get, concerned about maybe not being prepared. There's a lot that goes into the mindset of being successful in business. What's that for you? What are 1 or 2 things that you really kind of hang tight for yourself that have worked for you that you think will work for others listening?
It's a good question. I think if you're it's different for different people, right? But and different stages. But if you're just getting started, don't worry so much about automation. Figure out process.
Yes.
Figure out process, and also figure out just defining the experience that you're giving people. and try and work as much as you can on the business so that you're doing something that is repeatable.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to allow you to scale that investment and as little do things that don't require your time
Yes.
as much where possible. It looks like your daughter's coming in. He got a question for you.
Right. Oh no. Hey. No, she's just saying hey.
Oh, cool. So what I would say is if you're just starting out and you're not at about $500,000 in revenue,
Yeah.
automate things that make it easy for people to connect with you first. So make sure that you've automated being able to book a time with you if that's what you're doing, or buy from you. Make the basics of the connecting with you easy. Don't make it hard.
Yes.
Automate that. But otherwise, don't worry too much about automation. Think about the processes and start documenting what you're doing and try and improve that. And then when you're about $500,000 in revenue, that's when automation makes a huge difference in your business, because that's about where your scale of time versus people that you're paying, the investment in serious automation will start to make sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I love that. I love the focus on process. And again, I go back to those 5 areas. I almost, you want to call them 5 pillars.
Yeah, you can call them that.
Convert, fulfill, delight, refer. I want to make sure I give you proper credit on those when I quote them in the future, because I will. But, in those areas, I say, I love that, understand your process. Don't get so focused on automating, but make it easy for people to do business with you early.
Yeah.
Right? And to do that, like you say, things like your calendar, using the calendar, tools and things like that for, making it easy for people to connect with you. Right. Yeah. And then you can work on over time, refining your process around, the convert and fulfill piece of it. Yeah. Right. But if you're really good in the attraction, you're really good in the delight and the refer.
Those 3 first.
Yeah.
And you got to be good at fulfill. Otherwise you'll be,
well, out. Yeah.
That's a given. Let's say fulfill is a given, but if you got to figure out how to attract, be really good at that. If you focused on nothing else, be really, really good at that and refer. Yeah. Those 2 things. And if you find that people aren't referring you, it's because one of those fulfill or delights isn't working very well. Yeah. So get really good at attracting, get really good at referring, getting people to refer you, and then find out what's the process you're doing to make that happen. And then from there, automate as much as you can of it to free up your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And even on the fulfill side, you could focus there, not so much on the automation, but even at a basic level, making sure that you can do it, right?
Yeah.
And, because obviously if you can't deliver, that's like you say, the whole thing's blown up. But
that's right.
But yeah, if you can fulfill on that basic level, and then fulfillment becomes a bigger priority as you look to, be able to automate. But if you can feel at that basic level to get to the delight and the refer, I mean, like you say, you're starting to cook with gas, that much more.
And I'd say one other thing, and this is something good for people getting started out, because especially if you're doing 2 things at a time, maybe you're building a business and in another job as well. One of the things that you need to be able to do is follow up with people, and you're going to run out of time and you're going to forget. So if you do one automation right out of the gate, make sure that you have some kind of automation, whether it's a reminder for you or it's through an automated system, that you are delivering some kind of info to people once they find out about you, once they've connected with you,
right?
So they don't forget about you. Because you can never have too much follow-up.
Right. That's very true.
Because it'll either move people to a decision of a yes or a no. Both are good. You just need to get people to make a decision on whatever it is, the problem that you solve, whether they're interested in solving that problem with you or not.
Yep, absolutely. Great way to kind of sum this all up, Sam. That's tremendous. Sam Ovett is our guest today, the founder of mobilepocketoffice.com. Please go there, MYB, when you get done listening to this episode, mobilepocketoffice.com. Connect with Sam and his team. And again, let him know that you heard him right here on the Minding Your Business podcast. You know what, Sam? We're going to have to come back for a part 2 because this has been a tremendous dialogue, man, to say the least. And there's so much more we could touch on, whether it's pandemic stuff, post-pandemic, whatever it is. There's so many, areas that we could go. So I'd love to be able to have you back on at some point here in the near future, man, to just, get your take on some different areas, hear some more about, experiences you're having in your business. Cause I think, like you say, as people hear from you and more folks like you, it just helps, everything overall. Right. Because, something today was said to inspire somebody or, maybe, is going to help somebody keep going where they might've been ready to quit. I think, folks got some real good understanding of, practical things that they can do in their business, practical ideas. And so I really appreciate your transparency and openness, man, to sharing with us today. I learned a ton and I think our audience did too. So definitely appreciate it.
Cool. Well, thank you for having me on. I was happy to be here. Maybe we can get Josh on next time because he's got a whole different kind of perspective that he brings with the experience of he's older than me. He's my dad.
Yeah. That would be tremendous, Sam. We should set that up and have, you and your dad come in as a father and son. Because I think there'd be some nice comparison contrast there, with that'll be great and again, really help folks. So Sam, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Take care. Best wishes to you and your family. And like I said, look forward to connecting on the next round.
Likewise.
Yep. Awesome. Listen, that was Sam Ovett, our guest today, MYB community, the founder of mobilepocketoffice.com. Again, make sure you go there. It's right in the show notes. Go check him out, learn a little bit more, connect with them. If you're in a place in your business where you're ready to automate, there's no better time than now. And let Sam and his team, be a resource for you. And you can never have too many resources. So let them be a resource in helping you automate pieces of your process to make your business and the impact that it has just a little bit better. Don't forget champronbrooks.com. You can connect with me. Got some great things going on, some great things that are going to be coming, some upcoming webinars that I'll be doing, again, just to help bring information and kind of tie it and have you connect with me a little bit. Some of those will be, very inexpensive. Some of those will be even some free webinars that I'll be doing, but go there and get signed up. We don't spam or anything, that type of thing. So I'll send you very minimal information, but I want it to be impactful to you as well. Listen, there's 3 areas. I talked about this when we started the podcast, but I always like to end on this note. There's 3 areas that unite us all. That we all have the pursuit of, no matter how we look in the mirror or what side of the train tracks that we come from. We all want to be a little better for ourselves, a little better for our families, and a little better for our communities. And if we can keep that in mind with every interaction that we have, we'll make this place just a little bit better for all of us. So listen, go be great, be aggressive, and be your very best as you move forward. Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast.